Why is it so dark on your end?
I'm sorry. I'm in the motel in a very far away of Saigon.
Oh no.
It's in the countryside, and my room there's no window, and
Oh no.
it's very poor condition where we are. So,
Oh, no
so
worries.
sorry.
But the internet still works perfectly, so that's the most important part. So,
I just said
anyways,
I'm quite nervous, but I hope it stay. Yeah, the internet.
yeah. So no. Everything is working so far very good. Anyways, it's 2 o'clock, so let me just go ahead. Thank you so much for coming back. I'm super happy to have a lot of you here, and of course, with a lot of our participants. We started, of course, last night with the live final pitch, and we're really happy to have over 130 people join. Now we have around like 50 plus, so hopefully we'll have a little bit more as people come trickling in. And today's panel is called Southeast Asian Labs for and by Southeast Asians. It's discussion that I personally am really happy to have because a lot of times we don't talk enough about a lot of the resources we have within our own region and a lot of the initiatives and organizations that are being created in our region by people from our region to basically help the filmmakers. And so that's one of the reasons why we decided to do this talk. If you haven't met me before, my name is Raymond Pathanever Rangoon. I am the executive director of Seafic. And so this is the first panel that we're running, and I'd like to go ahead and introduce you to the 4 panelists that we have here. Of course, I have their pictures here because I just wanted to make sure that I get all their titles and everything correct. So we're going to start off from this slide, from the top left corner and then go clockwise. I apologize. Usually actually start at top right, but anyways, it doesn't matter. Please let me introduce you to, firstly, to Kuo Ming-Rong from the Singapore International Film Festival. She's the artistic director. And of course, she runs the Film Academy at the Singapore Film Festival as well. And then let me just finish the introduction, and then I'll get into each of you to introduce your program in more details. Then the next, which is the top right. I hope that you're seeing my screen correctly. I don't know if it's reversed or anything like that. Is Sean Chadwell, who is the executive director of the Luang Prabang Film Festival, and it's also running the talent lab there. Then the bottom right is Varadila from Indocs. She's the program manager, and she also helps run the Docs by the Sea, a very important documentary lab in Indonesia. And last but not least, of course, we have Tran Bich Ngoc, who's on the bottom left, who is the co-founder of Autumn Meeting in Vietnam. So with that, so this is just for more information. This is their websites. Autumn Meeting is basically mostly run through Facebook, so that's their link. So please, if you're interested, just screen cap this very quickly, and then before you go and meet them, quote unquote, online, so that you have this information. On that note, I'm going to stop the screen sharing now. If you just quickly print screen so that you have this information, that'd be great, so that we can start talking to the filmmaker. I mean, the organizers of these labs and academies. So let's start off, chronologically just now from what I just introduced. So with Kuo Ming-Rong. So can you introduce yourself a little bit, as well as the Singapore Film Festival, and what is the Film Academy?
Okay, this is a short introduction, not the long, short introduction.
Well, we have time.
Okay. Well, I will just talk short first, and then give people time to talk about it. So we actually just wrapped our 31st Singapore International Film Festival last month in December. And the Film Academy is it's actually a collective umbrella for various different initiatives we do. So we have Southeast Asian Film Lab. That's for the writer-directors. And then we have Producers Network, also only open for Southeast Asia. And we also have, at the moment, it's kind of actually call for entry for Film Fund. The Film Fund is for Southeast Asian short film, and then also for Southeast Asian documentary in production, and then for post-production. And I'll be happy to talk more about that because the sort of submission deadline is coming up end of January. And that's for the kind of film professionals or the filmmakers who are just starting up their film life, creative life. We also have other program that's more for education and for outreach. So for example, we have a youth jury and critics program. At the moment, that's only open for Singapore aspiring young critic. But after this year, we do everything sort of online. We're also considering if this year, 2021, the situation remains the same, then why not possibly open some participants from the Southeast Asian as well. So that's something under discussion. And then other program we have is film immersion program. That's for Singapore students and schools to bring films to the students and to kind of cultivate their film appreciation. And we also have a new wave program, which is showcasing short films, mostly from Southeast Asian, during the kind of off season of Singapore International Film Festival. So that's sort of a quick overview of many things under the Film Academy. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, of course, like the Singapore Film Festival's Film Academy, or what it is now, is probably one of the longer running organizations that have been helping the regional filmmakers. So can you give us a little bit of history of, how it started and why basically it was created?
Yeah, the festival kind of going to a bit hiatus in 2011, and when it came back in 2014, that's the 25th anniversary, and that's also the time when the Film Lab and the Youth Jury and Critics program started. And actually, the Film Academy and later the Producers Network was introduced in 2017, and then the Film Fund was introduced in 2018, and then gradually we have various different programs and initiatives all in place. So the Film Academy sort of become the umbrella to host all these initiatives. I think Singapore International Film Festival is always put strong emphasis on Southeast Asian talent, Southeast Asian filmmakers. So when we start these program, and I actually say we, it's also include all the people who have worked in Singapore International Film Festival, because I actually sort of officially joined Singapore International Film Festival in 2018, and all these initiatives and programs are started by the wonderful teams led by Uni since 2014. And these programs gradually developed, and then we also trying to adjust and see what kind of things we can do. But there's one thing I think compared to, say, for example, compared to Seafic or say Dogs by the Sea, I'm just kind of naming your program as a reference. I think one of the key idea for Film Academy is quite a lot of our program are closed door or sort of by invitation only. So for example, for the Film Lab, we also have pitching, but then the pitching actually doesn't open to public. Even if you are a guest in the film festival, you don't necessarily get to know when is the pitching, when the pitching happening. So the reason being, we want to create an intimate and sort of comfortable environment for the filmmaker who have the kind of have that intimacy and have that trust to share their projects to each other. So I think this is one of the quite different aspects of the Film Lab and the Producers Network initiative under our Film Academy. Yeah.
Yeah, I always the way that I always categorize the SGF as Film Lab, for example, is in some ways it's a little bit like a pre-Seafic situation, because I think that it's extremely important that a lot of filmmakers who are just starting to think of their first feature films, maybe they have written a treatment, but they haven't really gone all out to do a script. a place like Singapore International Film Festival's Film Lab is a perfect place to start pitching and try to figure out if this is a project that works or not, or is basically getting the kind of reception that you're interested in. Because one of the things that is extremely important for filmmakers is initial feedback. And that kind of feedback is, like, because like everything else in life, like you can't just say, oh, this is what I'm going to do, and immediately bam, it's going to happen. So it's always this, it takes time to develop something, even as a filmmaker. And Singapore Film Festival's Film Lab has been really fantastic in basically like giving a platform to a lot of these young filmmakers. For example, Tan, who is in our lab right now, was basically at the Singapore Film Festival's Film Lab, and she was, in fact, she won the most promising project before she came to Seafic. And I think that's exactly a perfect kind of recipe in many ways, because she was able to basically like kind of start pitching to mentors and to established industry people and get feedback to see whether it works or not. And in her case, of course, she won, and then she later then developed it in Seafic. And I think that that's a really great symbiosis of how a lot of the organizations in Southeast Asia can work together in tandem to basically kind of help each other and to make sense of a lot of these kinds of organizations that are kind of popping up as well.
Yeah, I should also add one thing, since you mentioned, because I forgot to mention, we are, for the Film Lab, we are looking for first-time film director, but we are looking indeed at the very early stage of a project. So ideally, when you submit your project, it should still be in the treatment stage. So it means that you are still formulating your ideas. And if you already got like 8th draft of your script, it's not really the place you should come. It's a place that I think in a very it's kind of collaborative. So what I found is very nice this year is, even though we do things online, but the vibe and the connections between the participants and the support they have for each other, because they all have to read each other's treatment, and then they give kind of very thorough, detailed written feedback to each other. And they kind of talk about what they feel about each other's projects, and beyond what the mentor offer. So I think that is a very, very nice, and it's kind of a nice place to start your first step. Yeah. And also Mayday. Mayday is also in our film lab last year. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, actually the year before.
The year before, right.
Yeah.
And then another thing that I have to mention, because a lot of filmmakers will kind of berate me if I don't, is of course is your support of short films. Because one of the things that I always hear from filmmakers is that, oh, short films are expensive, how are we going to make it, there's no support. And well, voila, Singapore Film Festival suddenly decided to have this fund for short films. So yeah, give us just a little bit of the detail about that, and also like why you decided to do that before I go.
For the film fund, we have short films and documentary film fund. And the good thing this year is we expanded to 4 projects. We are going to, so in previous years for short film, we support 2 projects, and this year we support 4 projects. So the short film, you shouldn't start shooting. It's kind of, it's still kind of script stage. So you will receive in total 4,000 Singapore dollars in cash, but then also the post-production support from White Light. And then for the documentary, we have kind of production and post-production. So the production is you receive, let me see, it's 30,000 Singapore dollar for production. And then for post-production, you receive, we give out 20,000, so 2 projects each. I think this is because some of the foundations and some of the kind of private donors who want to support projects from Southeast Asia. And so we start this film fund. And please, I will later kind of give the link on the chat. So please do look out for those guidelines to apply when you can. Yeah.
What is the deadline? I'm sure a lot of people are going to ask.
End of January. So we still got plenty of time, but don't miss this opportunity. Yeah.
Exactly, because it's already Jan 9th. So if you're interested, please do apply. Great, great. So let's go on to the next one. So let's go with Sean Chadwell. So Sean, from Luang Prabang. So hello.
Hey, Raymond.
Yeah, can you please describe a little bit about what the Talent Lab is, and also of course, some of the other activities that you do for Laotian filmmakers, and of course, like a little bit about the organization itself and its history.
Sure. Yeah, I'll also try to be really succinct to start, and then we can follow up if we need to. So the Luang Prabang Film Festival was started in 2009, and famously, we are a town without a movie theater in it. There hasn't been one here for decades, and so each December we stage this festival event that has a great big screen in the night market, and we have 1,000 or more people come out every night for screenings of Lao and Thai films. We screen other things during the day in a more intimate venue. We have public discussions. Because of the way we do programming, we use what we call motion picture ambassadors, and we have one former and one current motion picture ambassador on this call with us in each country. So people in the industry or critics or otherwise experts who recommend things from the current cycle of films in their countries, and then we sort of curate a program based on that. The result of that is a festival that we like to think of as often being end of circuit for a lot of films. That is, a good deal of the films we normally program have been around already. They premiered in Asia, they premiered in Europe and elsewhere, and the filmmakers come to Luang Prabang a lot of times after Singapore, in fact, and it's a place to sort of, if you know Luang Prabang, you know that it's a place to relax, to chill out. We have a very sort of high production value in the festival itself, but very low stakes. We don't do contests or awards of any kind. We give filmmakers, historically, we give filmmakers a chance to network and collaborate and meet audiences directly and participate in panels and things like that. And there's a lot of beer lao and a lot of just hanging out, right? So it's a vibe that lent itself naturally to growing into including a talent lab, which we did in 2016. But before the talent lab started, I should say that a dual part of our mission has always been the cultivation of a regional and really a national audience for Lao productions and the industry itself here. So in 2013, we started the Lao Filmmaker Fund for the first time. And it is exactly what it sounds like. Projects that can be short, feature, documentary. Filmmakers apply to us. We raise money every year. It varies depending on how much we can raise, but we give those grants directly to Lao projects. In 2020, we gave $52,000 to 7 projects, I think. We're really proud of that year. It looks like it's going to be a good year again this year for Lao Filmmaker Fund. And we could see that at the festival over the years, one of the big benefits that we hadn't really anticipated was that the collaboration between Lao filmmakers and others around Southeast Asia was happening here. They were able to meet their peers and learn from them and discuss new ideas and propose projects together. So the lab sort of naturally evolved starting in 2016, and we were lucky to have this partnership with Tribeca Film Institute for 4 years to deliver that lab. They were really generous, frankly. I mean, they sent instructors, and the sessions over 4 days were largely about grant writing, fundraising. These were for projects like probably in between the Singapore and Seafic, and sometimes projects after Seafic that have already raised some funding. They've been out on the market for a little while. They're looking for the next chunk. And when, and our lab tends to be really collaborative, it's very much in the ethos of the festival. That is, filmmakers are hanging out, they're talking to each other, they're supporting each other. It's a very friendly event. There are stakes. I mean, what we were providing as the sort of like top benefit of the lab was expenses paid for your production to go to New York to Tribeca's market. And that was something Tribeca offered us. When Tribeca folded, I've been trying for a couple of days to think of the best verb for what happened to Tribeca last year, but let's say they folded. they made that decision last year, and we realized we weren't going to have them as a partner anymore. We did a lot of soul searching and thinking about, well, what do we really want our lab to be? And we surveyed our previous participants, and just had a couple of realizations. One of which was that we were a conduit to the North American market that was unique in the region, and in as much as possible, we want to continue being that. Now, I have an answer to a later question that sort of contradicts that, but we'd like to continue giving filmmakers in Southeast Asia access to North America in one way or another, though we realize we're going to have to raise a lot more money to do it, and we're at work on that now. The other thing is that we wanted our lab to continue being that sort of open, mutually supportive, friendly atmosphere that we had developed in the first place. And so we're working now to be back on track for 2021, for the end of this year, to have a lab in December. Whether it's live or virtual, we still don't really know. I really want it to be live. I really miss seeing people around Luang Prabang. I know we all feel the same way. But we'll see what happens next. So Raymond, what did I leave out?
Well, yeah, I mean, how about like just a bit of a description of like because you select projects, right? So basically,
Yes.
like traditionally, the Luang Prabang Talent Lab selects projects that. So basically, like they already have a producer and a director attached,
Yes.
and then the projects then they basically go to the lab and they kind of like pitch it, right? So that's basically the kind of like the format that you have in some ways,
It's
and then
sort of an intensive pitch practice format with some built-in sessions on writing grants for, North American funders, for example, and looking for other sources of support for films. But yeah, so we see pitches on the first day. Those are refined. We have mentor sessions, sort of intensive round robin mentor sessions with invited participants. And there is a final pitch on the last day that is open to the public. And it's in a small venue here, but we make it clear everyone is invited. And
right.
There's some production funding as well as the trip to New York at stake in the final pitch, but it winds up feeling very supportive.
Right, and of course, one of the projects at Seafic that went to your to Talent Lab and also later to New York was Sai Song Kam Indran Chanti's project, Raising a Beast, for example. So that was also a great opportunity for Southeast Asian filmmakers to be able to go out, especially to North America. And like I said, like you said, North America tends to be a bit of a rarefied beast in that, traditionally, of course, we tend to do things more within Asia and or with Europe. But, like here was a rare opportunity to basically possibly have that North American contact and possibly co-production. And that's one of the things that Luang Prabang was doing well. Of course, with COVID and with the situation with Tribeca, of course, I know that, last year, the Talent Lab didn't happen, but that's one of the reasons why we wanted you to be here, to basically to let everybody know that you're planning for 2021 to come back. So
thank you so much for that, by the way. I'm really pleased to be a part of this discussion and flattered to be in this company.
No worries. So hopefully basically everything will go well, and then the Talent Lab will come back strong in 2021. So thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Great. And then next is Varadila from Docs by the Sea. And Docs by the Sea, if you don't know, is a lab for documentary projects and is going extremely strongly. It's been, it's famous and also very, very effective. And it's been a lab that basically people have been, very adoratory about. It's something that the filmmakers that go there are always praising. So welcome. So can you give us a little bit of the background on Docs by the Sea and all the programs and what you do?
Yeah, thank you so much, Raymond, for the nice introduction. I hope it's true, but Docs by the Sea is a lab specifically for documentary projects only from Southeast Asian filmmakers. We started in 2017. So the history was back in 2016, the Indonesian government created Indonesian Creative Economy Agency, where they want to push as much as investment comes to the country, especially in the creative industry sector. And then at the time, Indocs program director, Amelia Hapsari, went with several of the Indonesian creative economy agency staff to sort of have a survey in several countries to see how it works. And they went to Sheffield Doc Fest, where they came to the mid market. If you have heard of, it's like a big industry forum where you can meet like 300 industry guests, and you will have 60 projects there. And the conversation started there. Why can't we have this thing in our country as well, in Indonesia? Because it was Indonesian Creative Economy Agency. And the thing is, however, they want to support like sort of the documentary industry, how they cannot give a film fund or like a public film fund. So with the money resources they have, all that we can design is an industry forum. That's why Docs by the Sea is actually an international documentary forum. But of course, we wanted to diversify the projects by having the lab before the forum. So in 2017, the first years, we had 30 projects joining in, and we had labs, storytelling lab and editing lab. It was divided between the two. So the participants can apply whether they are on early stage or they are on the rough cut stage. And they will have 5 days lab. They won't only try to develop their story or to clarify what projects they want to make, but it will be the time for them as well to train to pitch, because this is something we found out that rather new for some filmmakers. They don't really know what is the pitching forum, what do they have to do there, what do they have to talk about when they meet the industry. Because like after the 5 days lab, we will have a pitching forum of 3 days where we invited, normally it's around 35 decision makers. It's called decision makers if you're not familiar with it, but it's like industry guests or stakeholders, people who have access to funding or people who can collaborate with the projects. And then it will be moderated by our fantastic moderators. And that's why it was, I think mostly people say it's a nice experience, because if you compare it with industry forum, for example, in Europe, where it can be very intimidating, what we try to make happen in the forum is that the projects are the star of the show. And the decision makers, they are not there to, I mean, like everyone wants to come there, because this is one of the strategy we had, is just to have it in Bali, because it was really hard to get people to like fly 16 to 24 hours to watch pitching forum in the project they never have heard before, the talents they never have heard before. But I think sort of like why we wanted to make it happen, it's a supportive ecosystem, it's a supportive ambience that happens around the pitching forum. And then after that, we created, just like in other forums, a one-on-one meeting between the filmmakers and the projects. Yeah, so that was in 2017, and until now we have been doing it again, with an exception in 2019. We have only the lab, or the incubator, we call it, as we have noticed if we keep doing it like every year, we will have sort of lack of proposals. I assume like other forums will have this problem as well, because we will keep like receiving the projects from same talents, or like a project that is not polished enough to join the forum. And last year we just happened to do it digitally, which was not very ideal, but we found that it opens up a new door, because when normally we have to like invite people to come to Bali, and we have limitation of our fundings. Now we can just invite everyone and ask if they want to watch the pitching forum online. And finally, we managed to get like 109 decision makers to join, and like more than 500 one-on-one industry meeting happens in the last edition. So we will going to see what we can try this year. So I think that, yeah, that's the basic of it.
Yeah, I mean, like the funny thing is, one of the things in Southeast Asia we have an advantage of is location, because, when we started Seafic, one of the things that I tried to lure the mentors, especially the really important ones, is come to Thailand, come to Chiang Mai, come to, like this beautiful like landscape, and you, of course, you're set in Bali. So, that's another way to do it, and of course with Sean, you have Luang Prabang, and with Autumn Meeting. Yeah, and Autumn Meeting is set in Da Nang. So all of us, in many ways, like Ming-Jung is in Singapore, which is a bit more, like city-like. It's not as exotic, I have to admit. But
okay, next time we set in Sentosa. Next time we do Sentosa.
Exactly. So like in many ways, like we establish ourselves that way, and to the point where, for example, in the last year because of COVID, we had to do it online. But luckily, Docs by the Sea at this point is established. Seafic has been established, so we are still able to do the things we do and attract the kind of things that kind of people to come, because now, of course, we have some pedigree to basically like get these people on board. So yeah, and of course, documentary is not something that Seafic does, but one of the reasons why I wanted you to be here is to also speak to the other side of the industry, which is documentaries. So you're more connected to, like, say, the Singapore Film Festival, because they have a documentary fund, for example. So this could go very much hand in hand with a lot of the projects that are in Docs by the Sea, that they can apply to to things such as SGFF, the fund, for example. And it's interesting because what you mentioned about the amount of projects, because at Seafic we only select 5, so we tend to not really have a lot of repeats. In other words, and also because we have, our requirements are very high, because we require that filmmakers have a finished script. And I think that we know that by giving this requirement, it means that there'll be a lot less applicants, because it's so much work to actually do a script. And in some ways, the reason why we wanted to make it a requirement is to show that, hey, you are really, really wanting to do this. And that's one of the reasons why we make a requirement. But for you guys, and you said you see the similar projects, how do you deal with that in terms of the kind of like the talent, the pool within Southeast Asia? Like, what do you think about it in terms of like?
Yeah, first of all, why we decided to have that much project participating in the lab, because it always ended with the pitching forum where we have the industry people come, and even though it's in Bali and it's part of holiday for them, but still they come to scout some projects. So you cannot just present 5 to 10 projects to them, because they want to know as many projects that might be suitable for their platform. So that's of course the basic reason why we need to have lots of projects in the forum. But of course we think it's good as well, because it can distinguish Docs by the Sea with the other lab as well. And I think what Seafic is doing and the other lab is doing is much more effective in development. We know that some participants that apply to Docs by the Sea, they said they actually wanted to join the lab. Not only they were not confident enough to join the forum, but they still apply for Docs by the Sea anyway. So we always recommend them, after the lab, you can try to join this other lab in Southeast Asia, or maybe we always give wild card for them to join the other lab and forum outside Southeast Asia. So that's what happened. We know what we're doing is really just touching not so deep, but just on the surface of what they are doing. So yeah, it's tough, because that's why we decided not to do the pitching forum every year, because we didn't have enough time to really develop the projects as much as we do. And we hope to collaborate more with other labs, because I think we have been supporting more or less every year the same projects, and they can have continuity between the labs that they are attending.
Right. And of course, our own lab manager was in your lab, basically, especially for the editing lab. So
2 times.
Exactly. Well, recently with the editing lab, for example. So we have a good example of somebody who has been going to your lab recently. Great, thanks so much. Okay, we'll go to the next last but not least, which is Tran Bich Ngoc, who is the co-founder of Autumn Meeting in Vietnam. And like I said, the lab takes place in Da Nang, but also partly in Ho Chi Minh City. And of course, what Autumn Meeting does is a little bit different, because you have a very strong Vietnamese component, but you also have the international side. So can you explain a little bit about that?
Yes, hi. So Autumn Meeting is our non-profit organization. It was founded by director Phan Đăng Di, a screenwriter named Ming-Jung, myself, and it started the first year in 2013. So with this very first year, we only started with 10 attendants who are 100% Vietnamese. But then since the second year of our edition from the 2014, we started to expand our program to more different type workshop. And so since then, since 2014, autumn meeting, including like a workshop where we give workshop to directing, cinematographer, production designer, and acting. So the whole time of the workshop takes place in over the course of 8 days. And we wrap the workshop with the 2 days of different activity, where the highlight is the project pitching. With this project pitching, we have 5 art house project pitched in front of the industry people, and the jury will select the best project to give award at the gala award dinner. And so over the course of 10 days, it's quite intensive for all the activity of the workshop and screening and wrap by project pitching. And the nice thing is, so up until this year, every year we have like 130 attendants. So coming from 10 days of the beginning year, we are now expanded to around 130 attendants. And the nice thing is all of us live in the same place. And so we kind of share, have a lot of time to build the bonding within the talent and the community. Of course, this year it doesn't happen because of COVID. Next year in Da Nang again. Now that's a thought that bring back the workshop to Saigon this year. But then I think that really take out on the nice thing of the autumn meeting, which is like the community bonding. So next year, hopefully with the COVID will go away, then we'll start to come back to Da Nang again and start our workshop.
Sorry, you stuttered a little bit. I don't know if it's on my end, but I think in the end we got everything that you said, which is that you had to do the lab in Ho Chi Minh, and then basically like you hope to go back to Da Nang. Sorry, it was a bit of a technical thing. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes,
sorry.
yes.
Just wanted to make sure.
No,
yeah,
I think it's my internet.
No worries. Yeah, and I think that's one thing that autumn meeting is very different from the rest, is that you have very specific courses for, say, cinematography or acting or set design, and that's something, of course, that like we don't do. That's something that Singapore or the other labs in Southeast Asia don't do, and I think that that's really interesting because you include, especially nowadays, some international people to these kinds of courses. So I mean, like, why did you decide to do that? And has it been difficult because of maybe language differences and things? Because I'll be honest, I've been to autumn meeting, but I haven't seen that part because, well, that year things were a bit split. So I'm kind of curious about like, how do you incorporate the international part into these kinds of like very specific courses on cinematography and stuff like that?
Right. I think you missed it last year. You missed the big fun in Da Nang. But yeah, I think our organization is a bit complicated. But I have to say the workshop, the directing workshop that we organized, that only 30% of attendance coming from Vietnam, and we have 70% of attendance coming from Southeast Asia and Japan, Korea. Last year we have people from Germany. So that specific course is run in English and open up for regional attendance, while the rest of the workshop is more dedicated to the local industry and local talent. But still in the producing workshop, sometimes we have people from other countries, but I mean, the majority is for local industry, because we feel like at the same time of developing and nurturing the talent, we also cannot miss the big part of the local film industry where it keeps growing so fast and it requires more talent and more skillful people. So that's why we kind of very complicated in organization. And the nice thing coming out of it is we've seen a few feature film that is made by the team from different workshops. So from that, the collaboration really takes place. And feature film is made by the team from the autumn meeting. We could see, the results come out from that as well.
So just to be clear, then the courses that are open at autumn meeting for filmmakers from Southeast Asia would be the directing lab, right?
Yes.
And also the pitching, right? There's a pitching lab as well, right?
Yes. So the nice thing for people in the directing workshop is, so the directing workshop is more dedicated for the director that moving from short film to first feature film. So when we selected the attendant based on their short film, we expect them to prepare their first feature film. So at least there will be a treatment or not treatment, I think. So throughout the workshop, to the end of the workshop with the pitching forum, we select five projects from this attendant, five best projects from this attendant to be pitched in front of the industry jury. Yeah, okay. So that's the additional beneficial part of the attendant in the directing workshop is to join the pitching session.
So in other words, you can't apply for the pitching session. You apply to the directing, and then you will choose the ones that you basically want to go for the pitching. Okay, I get it now. I didn't even know that. Even though, like I said, I've attended autumn meeting before, but I was a little bit it's always been a bit mysterious how autumn meeting works.
I know because we don't have enough sponsor to fly people in just for the pitching. Yeah, so we just contain the.
So okay, so basically for what is open for regional filmmakers then is the directing lab, and then basically from there then you choose the people to go for the pitching. Okay, that's great. No, but it's great because I think it's it's good for people who are interested because now they know that what they're aiming for is for this directing lab. And when do you usually open your call for entries? Oops, did I lose her? Did you hear me? Sorry.
Yeah, I think I missed you. Can you repeat, please?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's better now.
When do you open your call for submissions or call for entries?
Yeah, this also mysterious question. So for the rest of the workshop, opening up for the local talent, we open the submission around July. But for the directing workshop, there's no open for submission. We select them by individually and send out the invitation. So there's no open submission for those attendants. Yeah. And on the workshop, I have to say the directing workshop is free of charge. So we fly people in and they just be in the workshop and do all the pitching. Yeah, so that specific workshop is by invitation only.
Wow. So if you want to get into autumn meeting as a Southeast Asian filmmaker, then basically please try to be, get to know Ngoc and try to basically be best friends with her, and then hopefully she will invite you basically.
No, I think it's through the networking of our colleagues in different countries. If people see any upcoming talent with nice short film, then immediately we get a link and through that we know the talent.
Okay, so it's basically based on your short film. So okay, that's important to know. So the most important thing is to have very strong short films then. Okay, yes. Great. So one of the things that that I wanted to ask all of you is also about in terms of the kind of support that we get, because as you all know, Southeast Asia can be a little bit difficult in that, finding resources and also funding is very, very difficult within our region. And it's something I'm sure we all have the same kind of issues or struggles with. What do you think in terms of what would make it better, do you think, in terms of trying to, work regionally, together, and also basically trying to find ways to, have a more significant source of basically funding and or continuation? I know it's a difficult question, and it's just we don't have to dwell on this question a lot, but so Ngoc, what do you think? What would really help?
Yeah, I think the funding for independent film is always tough. It's getting tougher with the COVID, especially. But at the same time, for the past 2 years, I think I'm so grateful to receive the IMDA support for several projects. So I think within the region, there's more opportunity in terms of funding for our own independent film. Of course, it's never been enough because we can't only rely on the public funding for our film financially.
Sorry, I'm not talking about film. I'm talking about organization. So I'm talking about autumn meeting.
It's the same autumn meeting. So financially, we rely a lot on 3 different financial support. One is from different embassy, cultural department from embassy, and one is from different let's say local local production company, local film production company who interested in supporting us. And then the third resources come from people who is not in the industry, just who happen to like Z or like me, and they support us. But it's getting harder and harder, because for the first 2 years, we sponsor all the workshop. There's no fee, no tuition fee that we take from the attendant. But from the third year on, it's just beyond our capacity to raise the financial for the whole program. And so we have to decide to just dedicate the directing workshop free of charge, and other workshop we have to take a small tuition fee as part of our operation cost. It's never been easy raising the financial. I'm sure it's the same for Seafic, but the important part, I think the important thing, and also the difficulty for us, is because we want to keep the spirit of autumn meeting. We want on the financial, when it comes to us, it had to be in the way we want to keep our organization, the way we want to run it, and we don't want to change it for any reason because of any sponsor. So we rather be a bit under financially, but freely to do what we need to do for our organization. So that's our choice. It's tough, but we're happy with that.
Okay, great. Varadila, I mean, like you mentioned a little bit about the funding, because Docs by the Sea started out because the Indonesian cultural sector, basically the governmental sector, was interested in supporting this. So I mean, because there's a lot of changes in Indonesia lately, especially in terms of the governmental support side. So has that affected you, or basically what are the new changes in terms of like trying to support this kind of organization like yours?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, we are still funded by the government. The Indonesian Creative Economy Agency that started Talks by the Sea, unfortunately has been dismissed, but most of the stuff is like merging to the Ministry of Tourism and Creative Economy. So we still have some people who we can rely on, and we know that would like to continue to support the program itself. But of course, like it's about dealing with the new bureaucracy, because it's totally different from ministry, between like an independent agency, even though it's a government agency. So at the moment, we are still secure in that way, but we think like in the future, we have to see the opportunity for the forum itself to have a capacity to make people pay for accreditation. So at some point, we can be independent financially from the government. So, but it's still in the long run, I guess. It's a long-term mission for that.
Yeah. And Sean, I mean, like, because you mentioned, of course, that, that last year the lab didn't happen, but you're trying to reframe it, but at the same time, still keeping that core of, like this collaboration between Southeast Asians and also this kind of North American exposure. I mean, can you, talk a little bit about that as well?
Well, yeah, I'll say a couple of things about that. I mean, we face the same sort of financial stress that everybody does at the moment, and for us, a lot of people around Luang Prabang think that we're only a festival, but in fact, the festival is where we raise unrestricted income from sponsorships that pushes us well into the subsequent year of the work we do for filmmakers. So we're in a weirdly tight spot right now, because last year was terrible for sponsorships, of course, and we're trying to raise money to run the usual programs. What we're looking at right now is we were very fortunate to have the Swiss Development Corporation reach out to us last year and say they wanted to support the Lao Filmmaker Fund. And that, along with their funding and some funding from Oxfam last year, we were able to give a great big round of grants in a year when everybody benefited tremendously from that. We are intending to work with them again this year, and we're hoping to propose some of their funding go to support our new iteration of the Talent Lab in December. But I'm also really interested. One of the reasons I'm excited about this call is because I'm really interested in setting aside funding for Lao filmmakers to attend labs and workshops around Southeast Asia, so that we've got a pool of money, and you know, Ngoc, it would be great if we could, you know, collaborate more intentionally at some point with Autumn Meeting. I mean, there are people I'd love to try to get into Autumn Meetings, workshops, and labs. And you know, I know, and I understand. I mean, I get all the reasons for the way you guys do it, but you know, if there were tuition and if we were paying for travel for filmmakers, you know, it would help, right? So, you know, and I think that would be a great collaboration. So it's one thing we want to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, our funding picture this year is, you know, we're using the word benefactor a lot, and we're looking at big pools of public support where we haven't in the past. And you know, last year we were really lucky in a lot of ways. The production of Mekong 2030, which was a big 2-year effort, we had support through 2020 for distribution that helped to keep us going. This year, we don't know. I mean, we're a very small team, fortunately, but we have to see what happens. We feel confident, though. I mean, you know, it's gonna be good for the filmmakers we support, even if it's not great for us this year. So.
Yeah, I think that, you know, all of us basically, like, I think Singapore, you know, like even Singapore, you know, like you don't have the biggest team. So people think that Singapore is very large, but, you know, you don't have a huge team either. All of us are pretty small in general. But what you mentioned about, you know, like this cross-regional and cross-organization collaboration, exactly what we're trying to promote. Because so if there are Lao filmmakers who are interested in documentary, maybe that there are some ways that, you know, Luang Prabang can work with Docs by the Sea or Autumn Meeting. And I think that that's one thing that we could do more of in many ways, is these kind of like cross-regional collaboration. I mean, like I've been to most of your labs in one way or another, but basically, like, you know, like I definitely want to, you know, really push that, as well as, you know, not just basically like, you know, everybody's just always going to, like, say, you know, other, you know, bigger Asian markets or European or North America. Yeah, there's a lot of things that we can do among ourselves, I feel. Yeah, do you agree with that, Ming-Jung?
Yeah, I think I would just kind of follow up on the funding part. For what you mentioned is quite interesting, because for this year, not this year, last year, 2020, Singapore International Film Festival was also, we also struggle a bit in terms of funding. The reason we can actually carry on last year was because the funding we received from the IMDA is on the 2 years sort of continuous funding from the application we made in 2019. But we also rely a lot on private sponsorships or donations, which is not that ideal for last year. So the team we had last year actually less than half of previous years. So it's a very kind of lean thing to carry out the thing that we supposed to fulfill when we wrote the proposal in the year before. And I think but I think another thing about receiving public funding is that sometimes you need to adjust the balance between what kind of KPI people set out, the government set out for you to do, and then what kind of and you ask yourself, why I want to do this, what exactly we want to achieve. So for example, we've been talking about the Film Lab, but I also want to talk a little bit about the Producers Network. The Producers Network we had is actually by invitation for only 6 producers to come and do their case study, basically propose, like use their experience and the project they have been working on to share, and to sometimes with budget, or sometimes with legal contracts and things that you don't really want to share with that many people. But sometimes when you have different KPI, the funding body may want it to be a bigger event, may want to see the numbers, a lot of people attending. But when a lot of people attending, you don't get that in-depth conversation. You don't get that kind of valuable exchange. So it's the kind of, we need the funding to operate, but we also want to have the flexibility and some kind of freedom to do the things that we feel it will be really beneficial to the filmmakers that we want to support. And then for this year, I think everything is still, we're still trying to apply for fundings and then see if some kind of private sponsorship may be more positive this time around. I don't know. Yeah.
No, I mean, one of the reasons why I asked this question is because, unfortunately, us being in Southeast Asia, we don't get the kind of pan-regional support of, say, like in Europe, because Europe, they have Creative Media Europe, for example, that helps fund a lot of the organizations across all of Europe, for labs, for opportunities like that. Whereas for us, we have to not only fund it locally, but to actually make it regional, we have to go in the extra step, further in many ways to basically like make it happen. And I think that, it's important for filmmakers to understand that, like it's not easy for any of us to basically kind of like run the things that we do, but we're trying our best to basically make it work. And in many ways, I think that we have an advantage because we're from Southeast Asia. And I think that in many ways, we're able to better identify a lot of the commonalities and also the kind of storytelling or the kind of like challenges that Southeast Asians face. Because a lot of times when you go internationally to like the bigger labs, they tend to, be for an international audience. And so in some ways, it's not always suitable for all filmmakers. And also sometimes there's a certain perception of Southeast Asia by people outside that, oh, we think of you this way and this is the kind of films that you want to make. Whereas a lot of filmmakers, they may want to make other kinds of films. So, I mean, as the last question before we hand it over to the public for questions, how do you deal with that kind of balance in terms of basically like making sure that, that the sense of, the kind of like the essence of Southeast Asia and the kind of films that the Southeast Asians want to make is still kept intact within your organization and your lab. So Varadila, what do you think about that?
So there was an interesting fact that in the first year, for the 30 slots, we have 5 slots for international documentaries, so they can apply, but we don't provide any like flight or accommodation support for them. But we were thinking like, when we invite these industry people, they want to have like an array of like choices of projects that they can see pitched to them. But after the first edition, and we have 5 international projects, most of the feedback we have from the industry guests is they are more mind blown by the Southeast Asian projects, and they feel like it will be best for the lab itself or the forum itself to focus on Southeast Asian stories only. So we might have other international projects, but it will be based on like partnerships with other countries outside Southeast Asia, for example, with Korea or with China. But so that's what we think it's what people want to find in Docs by Disease. They want to find Southeast Asian stories. And although we have so many mentors from Europe in the lab, when I speak with the filmmakers, they felt like it was never like an attempt to change the whole story or the narrative to speak to the global audience, but it's more like whatever the filmmaker feels in the end, what's best that would work for their projects. Is this international experts, they come to give like a new perspective on the story, but not for really like dictating what the story they should make, something
Right.
like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's what at Seafic for us is the same thing, is that we have international mentors, but it's the kind, I mean, like, the films that the filmmakers are making are what they want to make. And we're not there to change that, but to basically help them to see clearly of how to basically to achieve that. Ngoc, do you agree?
Yeah, totally. I think the strength of Southeast Asian filmmaker is our Southeast Asian story. So yeah, it is there no way that we ask them to change or apply any different perception over the story. I think what we want to help the talent in our workshop is to introduce the pitching to them and knowing that, before you can do your film, that's what you have to go through to present, to talk about your project. You can say it out loud, that what you want to do. So all that skill we want to give to the attendant rather than inject to their own story. And of course, we choose the story to be pitched, and so we respect their artistic idea, and which help them improve the skill to present their project.
Yeah, Ming-Jung, do you feel the same about your film academy?
Yeah, I think I totally agree. And then I think when I first, actually the first time I dropped into the Southeast Asian Film Lab is in 2016 or 2017. And that year, the mentor, we always make sure that two mentors who work with the Film Lab participant throughout the 7-8 days are from Southeast Asia. And it's like one thing I feel very touching is the mentor was giving the task for the participant to tell their story without naming the protagonist. So I was listening to to them talking about the story, to talking about the specific of the geography, or sometimes the history, or sometimes the common kind of folklore. And I feel I can see how people kind of connect and to respond to the thing that they know, they're aware of, and it's also part of the kind of cultural heritage. And I think that is quite, that sort of connect the participants and then also create the good vibes within the film lab, because when they first started, they don't feel they need to go through that length to describe things that to people feel quite like, oh, I need to describe where it is. I need to tell you in our country, this is the situation and blah, blah, blah. It's like we already sort of understand. And then that kind of make people glue together a lot quicker. And I think that's quite moving. That's actually my first impression of the film lab. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree. And, like a lot of times, when you go outside, sometimes people are surprised. They're like, oh, they don't know that Malaysia is a majority, like, mostly a Muslim country, for example. They don't even know that. And so a lot of times you end up having to explain the circumstances or things that with Southeast Asians, you kind of don't have to, because there's a certain shared history and knowledge that basically it makes it a little bit easier for you to basically for other people to kind of understand. So Sean, yeah, what do you think about that as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that dovetails exactly into the experience at our lab, which you can imagine because we have traditionally had instructors coming from the TFI network, and we're talking about how do you pitch this story. I mean, the stories come in formed already, as you noted. I mean, these are projects. They've already raised some money, a lot of them, so they have their stories, and we love the stories. That's why they're in our lab. But then I think if there's a sort of a refrain, it is know your audience when you're pitching, right? Like understand who that audience is. Like you're not, especially if you're going to wind up at Tribeca with your film, how do you talk to that audience about this project, right? And so there is some adjusting for like, well, in Malaysia, this is what the population looks like. And, and I'm thinking specifically at the lab in 2019, we had Fruit Gathering, which has gone on to do pretty well. And but a lot of the discussion around that and the mentoring around that at the lab had to do with helping them to contextualize that story, and then help everyone else understand how it's both a distinctly Southeast Asian story, but a universal one and a compelling one as well. And so, but the takeaway would never be. So therefore you have to change your story to make it more universal or to make it more attractive to other audiences. Instead, it feels cynical to say it, but instead the takeaway is more like, here's how you pitch this story to an audience in New York, as opposed to an audience in Yangon, right? So I think and I agree with everything everybody just said.
Yeah. So Fruit Gathering is a Myanmar project, just a FYI, by a filmmaker whose short film was in Locarno before. So sorry, just to describe what Fruit Gathering is.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, it's okay. No worries.
And the filmmaker is Aung. How do you say his last name? Yeah,
Aung Pyo, yeah. So.
Yeah.
Okay, on that note, we have a little bit more time to do questions, Q&A. So any questions? Okay, there's one of them here. Are student filmmakers eligible for film funding? What qualities do you look for when you choose filmmakers? So I guess because if you're talking about film funding, I guess we'll first talk with Ming-Jung. So how would you answer that?
Well, we didn't say you have to be a graduate to apply for film fund. So yes, you can, but you do need to have experience of making a short film before. And I think it's like what I think the second question about selecting filmmaker probably is for Ngoc, but then for the Film Fund, it's really based on the story, on the projects, and on your past short film. So it's that simple. Yeah.
I think that, yeah, exactly. Like, you know, I don't think being a student filmmaker, quote unquote, is the barrier. It's more about that basically you have to at least have had made some previous short films. And because most of the time people make short films in school, so that means that basically, like, yeah, you probably should have graduated with already 1 or 2 short films before you apply for kind of the film funds. And I think that's what people are looking for, and I think that goes with all of us, you know, like autumn meeting, because you said you look at the previous short films very, very carefully, for example, right, Ngoc?
Yes, yeah, yes. So we're basically just previous short film and the treatment of the first feature film, and of course you have to speak English very well. So it's quite simple.
Yeah, and Varadila, is like for you, do you look very carefully also about previous films?
Yeah, I think that's part of what we try to see, because you were one of our jury as well, Raymond. So you remember we basically really try to find the strength of the projects, and then we will look at the track record of the filmmakers to know, and we will see the, like, if the project, if the budget they have really makes sense. That's part of it as well. Yeah.
And for Luang Prabang, of course, because that's a little bit more advanced, I think, because you already have to have producers, and it's already kind of like a little bit farther along. So I think it's not exactly for student filmmakers per se, right?
Right,
so.
Right. I mean, for the lab, I mean, for the fund, for the Lao Filmmaker Fund, and that's only open to Lao filmmakers, obviously. We look at everybody, but we also have a fairly, it's not intensive, but it's a very clear application process. I mean, we need budgets, we need sort of previous experience and all that, and we do a lot to help people prepare their applications, and with the intention of, you know, if we get a complete application, we're going to try to find a way to fund at least a little bit the projects that are applied for.
Okay, great. So great. The next one is, this is really for Ngoc. What kind of activities happen in the director workshop at autumn meeting?
So for the past 7 years, the mentor of our directing workshop is Director Tran Hong, is a important component of autumn meeting. So within 7 days with Tran Hong, so we talk about movies and screening movies and talk about the cinema language, and so it's all about the cinema language, how you watch a film, and what is the film about, and the film language. So basically that's those 7 day intensive 7 days with whom I remember every workshop with whom. Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, go on, please.
Yeah, so every workshop with whom, the first day of the workshop, the attendance started very cheerful and happily, but after 7 days, they all kind of get torn out and devastated, and even like depressed and don't know what they are doing. So that's not to be scary, but that's the end result of the 7 days of workshop with whom. But it's very intensive, 7 days of watching movie and talking about cinema.
Yeah, so I just wanted to.
So it's basically, it's not about. Yes.
Sorry, it's stuttering a little bit, so there was a pause just now. I just want people to know, because Tran Hong is the Vietnamese French director who won the Venice Golden Lion for Ciclo. So for people who don't know who Tran Hong is, I just wanted to clarify. So anyway, sorry, go on.
Yeah. So for us, the 7 days workshop with whom is not about, so it's not the project mentoring. It's not about mentoring your first feature film. It's about learning and watching movie and talking about the cinema. That's basically what happened over the 7 days of the workshop.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, next one. If an applicant has a strong pitch and concept for a film but has a weaker track record for their past projects, is that a deal breaker? What can you do to boost their chances? So, okay, so I think that, Ming-Jung, what do you think? So if they have a strong pitch, but maybe their previous shorts are not super strong, does that affect their chances?
It's a very interesting question, because I think kind of strong pitch in the sense like is it about the pitching skills or about the story, the idea? Like I have a really good ideas, but it sort of depends on how later throughout workshops, through working on your scripts and working with the producer and working with different parties that were involved in your projects, how that originally you think is a great idea, the great good pitch will really develop into a solid good film. So I kind of put a question mark on the really good pitch, because what does that really good pitch mean? I think you still, I kind of feel if you're not so confident with your past track record, I feel probably, this is probably a little bit blunt, but probably work on having a good short film first before feeling like my story is fantastic. I should be accepted into the workshop or be given the fund, because I feel sometimes when we look at the treatment, when we look at the scripts, I sometimes feel, especially say for example, for the Southeast Asian Film Lab in SGIF, we are looking at projects from the treatment stage, and then a lot of time we don't actually know what it will become a few years down the line when it kind of get to the 7th, 8th draft. So in a sense, we sometimes do put a trust, sort of a leap of faith based on the director's previous work. I just know from the past short films, you know, this director have exceptional talent, and he or she is still building on her ideas. So you want to give her the chance, even though the treatment is still kind of in an idea stage. So my answer for that is you do need to have a good short film or a film that shows you are exceptional. Then we can talk about whether your ideas are really exceptional. Put it this way, that would be my answer.
Yeah, at Seafic, I would totally agree that basically like, because in the end, you know, what we are looking at are films, and if you cannot show that you can make films, then there's nothing else to talk about, because, you know, when you have a good concept or a strong pitch, you can easily just write a book rather than make a film. So without a really strong previous film that shows that you can really make it, then, you know, it's extremely hard for us to basically like accept those kinds of projects, because ultimately we're looking for talent of the actual filmmakers first and foremost.
I think the short, the short film basically is to show that you have the visual, you have the talent to tell your story in a visual and audio way. Yeah.
Right. Sorry, because there are a lot of questions, so I'll just do one each. So I'll just finish this one first, and then for the next one, how does emerging feature directors, e.g., on their first and second features, fare in your selection? Sean, I'll give this one to you. So how does that work for you? Like, because of course, with your, you know, lab being more about the projects.
Yeah, I mean, if the question is essentially, do we prioritize one or the other of those? Like, would we prefer to see a second project or a first project? Actually, if that's the question, I don't know the answer, because I think that we're really looking at the project that's presented to us. Though this seems to follow up on the last question pretty closely. I mean, if there's some good prior work, that's certainly going to help, right? To get something in, short film, whatever. But we're certainly not averse to considering first projects at the LPFF Talent Lab. We love them.
Yeah, I think the question's a bit vague, but I guess, you know, like, how do they fare is, it depends on what your previous work is. I think that's really the answer. If it's really, if it's, you know, if you made a first feature film already, but, you know, it shows certain, it may not be 100% there, but it shows some promise, or, you know, there's some talent behind it, then yeah, basically, like, you know, you're going to be a lot more eligible for things going forward, whether it's your shorts or your first feature. It really depends on what the work is. I think
exactly.
Yeah. Okay, next, sorry. Do you mind if the directors and the writers are different? Who do you look forward to meeting to in pitches, Varadila? Because basically, of course, documentaries, sometimes people don't realize that they're writers also. And sometimes, you know, like, it's a little bit different. You can also answer some of the questions before if you'd like to too. Like, I mean, like, do you mind if the creatives are sometimes not always the directors and things like that?
Yeah, I'm not sure if that applies in documentary, because the director and the producer, they work together and in making their script or treatment. I've never come across like they have a special writer in documentary projects to do it for them. So
Right.
yeah.
But how about basically like the first and second question, filmmaker question? Do you think that basically like because I mean, are most of the people who apply to Docs by the Sea beginning filmmakers, are all beginner, or you basically also have some people who are a bit more advanced?
Oh, it's a combination of both. We do have like film students as well, as long as they apply with good projects, and we do have people who have their films being screened in festival circuits, who has attended a lot of pitching forums. So it's a combination of both. Yeah.
Right. Ngoc also, like, like just kind of combine both. I mean, like, do you mind if the director and writer are different?
I haven't seen any independent film that I mean, within our circle, that the writer director, and most of the time they are the same people, but I mean, creatively it can be writer, can be someone else, but I mean, most of the cases in our lab, writer director are the same people.
And do you have also like filmmakers who are also a bit like not just beginning but also making their second films? You don't also kind of like it's not just for new filmmakers, right? The director's lab.
Yes, the majority is dedicated for first time or second time filmmaker. We hardly receive the well experienced director in the directing workshop. There are few of them, but they're more like attendant on special case. But majority of the attendant are for first time filmmaker.
Right. And yeah, basically, like I think just answering for Seafic, like I think for us, we don't mind that the directors and the writers are different, because in a lot of cases we do like we can only we can only fly in the director and the producer, but if you do have a writer and you want them to attend, then it's on you to bring them. But we're happy to basically have them there, because for us, we do understand that sometimes some of the best directors are not necessarily writers. Ridley Scott, for example, is a great director, but he doesn't write. He never writes, and we don't expect filmmakers to be writers necessarily. But of course, generally in Southeast Asia, because of the low budget and also the independent-mindedness of the region, because there's not a lot of funding. So that's one of the reasons why most of the time the directors become the writers, because they can't afford to have somebody else, and or there are no instruments to basically kind of like have really clear screenwriting as a real kind of like profession. So that's one of the reasons why. But for us as Seafic, we don't mind. So if you're a first-time director with a more advanced writer, that's fine. So I hope that answers the question.
And I want to jump in on that too, just for a second, if I can.
Sure.
Certainly, we don't mind either. In fact, it's not exactly a requirement at our lab that it would be a producer-director team. And so we've had writer-director teams come as well. And those turn out to be great. I mean, I think when the writer is different from the director, it's fantastic to have that person as part of the workshop with us.
Right. Sorry, we kind of ran out of time already. I apologize that we can't answer everybody's question. We've answered about 6 of them. So unfortunately, we have to, stop and adjourn and to already prepare for our next session, which is for Seafic Open Fair, which starts at 3:30, so Bangkok time. So apologies. We'll try our best to answer some of the questions. We'll save these, and then maybe what we will do is we will answer them on the Seafic Facebook. So let's keep those, and then basically like so because since you bothered to ask the questions, I think it's important that we try to do our best to basically answer these. So if you don't mind us answering that, we will do our best to basically like to save some of these for those Facebook questions. So thank you so much to everybody. Thank you so much to Ngoc, to Varadila, to Sean, to Ming-Jung for being here. And so let's also, like maybe behind the scene, you guys can also talk about how we can collaborate, and maybe in the future, it would be really great to see a lot of these kind of cross regional collaborations happening, and to really like work to help a lot of the Southeast Asian new talents coming out. So thank you everybody for watching, and thank you to our team for setting this up. So if you're attending Seafic Open Fair, I'll see you very soon. So thank you.
Thank you, Raymond.
Thank you, Raymond. Thank you.
You.
All right,
Bye.